an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering The Magician's Apprentice, chapters 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, and 36. In these chapters, Stara gets married, and it turns out, surprisingly, that her father picked somebody that she likes. However, things are not actually the solution that they looked to be initially. Also, it looks like Giant's coming to terms with the fact that he is low-key in love with Tessia. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha. Many thanks to Ashleigh for commissioning this episode. Yes. Oh, guys, there's a lot going on in these chapters, and things have taken a surprising turn. Let's start. So, chapter 31, and this is part 4 that we're in right now. Martin's here. Hi, Martin. We start off with Stara waking up and realizing that Vora basically drugged her so that she would sleep through the day, because she is about to get married and she doesn't think that she's going to be able to fall asleep. And the wedding wrap that she is going to be wearing is actually black, and it is covered in sequins. And I love it because it's so it's interesting to me to think about the very first time that anybody saw sequins and what that must have been like. Sequins are my peanut butter, my bread, and my jam, folks. I love me some sequins. And she says, I wonder why these beads have never been made it to market. And Vora says, because it's only used on wedding gowns. The quans, I think is how you say it. Quans are carved from quanon shell. It's a slow process, and the shell is rare, so they are very expensive. It is also traditional to reuse those on a mother's gown for her daughters, but since your mother took hers to Aline with her, your father had to buy new quans for this one. And she gets dressed, and Vora is like, you look so good, and you always do, and my job when I have to try and make you look nice is so easy, and I wish the whole rest of my job was this easy. And she winds up getting Stara to drink something, even though Stara doesn't think that she's going to be able to stomach anything, and it just becomes clearer and clearer that Vora is her mom and knows best. And low-key, Vora really should be in charge of everything. She should be king. Let's just say it. But the world is a cruel and unfair place, and we are stuck with her shitty father. So that's that. So she heads out there, and she is in this crazy dress, this headdress that she can't see. And Vora has to signal her when to stop and when to keep walking by yanking on the back of it and whatnot. It's really rather funny. And her father tells her how fortunate she is that he was able to find her a husband, be an obedient wife, and do not shame me. She followed her father through the house, then out into the courtyard. She climbs into this wagon that she can't see, and it takes her off, and finally her father tells her to get out, and it's really close by, which doesn't actually give her the clue, because I kind of figured the guy she winds up with, I figured that he was going to be the one that she had met in the market because of the way he had been introduced. I was like, there's no way this dude doesn't come into play somehow, right? But she's not really thinking this through, the fact that this dude is this close by. So they put her in the bride room. All mansions have them, but they are closed up except during weddings. It will take a while before the men have finished their negotiations, to which she very reasonably is like, what negotiations? And Vora tells her it's part of the ceremony. Though all the details will have been worked out before now, they'll do a bit of mock bartering. Your husband-to-be will pretend to have doubts, pretend that your price isn't low enough, and your father will list your virtues and threaten to take you home, which is really funny to me. And let's see. Oh, right. She looks at the walls, and there are all of these paintings of people having sex, and she's just like, what the hell? Why is this? This is totally like, even in Eileen, where people are a lot more like open sexually, this should not be allowed. And Vora says it's meant to make you ready for your wedding bed. And Stara's like, seems a little advanced viewing for someone who is supposed to be a young virgin, more likely to frighten them than excite them. Vora shrugged. Men and women have all sorts of strange ideas about each other, and most of them are wrong. Look, y'all. Vora ain't wrong, though. I don't know how many of you are patrons, and how many of you saw this incredible thread. I think that Jean-Marie shared in the group. But it was a dude who sincerely believed that women's vaginas make men's dicks bigger, and that if a woman sleeps with a man who is not, when she is not a virgin, that she has wasted her dick growing powers on some other guy when she should be reserving that for her husband, because she also wants her husband to have a bigger dick. And it's the weirdest, and this guy sincerely believes this. Like, he goes off for pages. It is bonkers. And like, women may have some strange ideas about men, but women are given a lot more of like education regarding the male reproductive system in school than men are given of the female reproductive system. Like, and especially when it comes to sexual pleasure, women are not taught what works for them. They are taught how sex happens in terms of like penetration, but we don't teach young girls about how to have orgasms themselves. A lot of women do not know that the clitoris is like a V shape. They don't know that it like stretches down around the vulva, and so they don't realize like the variety of ways in which they can be brought to orgasm. It's not encouraged, and so whenever we are educated in school about reproduction, it's always about the mechanics of P in V, ejaculation equals baby, and bringing a penis to orgasm is like so easy. It's so easy. It's so easy. And it's not necessary for a woman to have an orgasm in order to have a baby. So we act like it's just kind of like not worth learning about, because it's not, there's no risk of pregnancy and therefore risk to your reputation, kind of. And it's a weird thing that results in many, many people, not just men, but women also, not understanding vaginas and vulvas and like sexual arousal. And it is extremely unfortunate. There is a huge Twitter thread from somebody who acted as a sexual health educator in a high school. And the teachers came to her after she sent them materials on what she was planning to cover with the class, because she traveled from school to school, I guess. And they refused to say the word vagina in front of their students. They said that they did not feel comfortable with that, which I just can't believe that they are fine with saying the word penis and they can't say vagina and they don't see the problem with that. Like, having discomfort around one word versus another is very revealing anyway on its face. But once you realize that you have that problem, you should examine that. And apparently these people did not do examining. And yeah, she was just sharing the fact that women's sexual health and pleasure is simply not treated as a necessity. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that men are still getting very basic shit wrong. It's such a shame too. 'Cause like, women can have multiple orgasms and guys act like they're so jealous of us that we can do that. But like, we can only do that if somebody's actually good at their job, right? Like, or if they let us do it, which is a shame. Like, figure it out, learn it. But yeah, it's really, when you talk to women, the amount of bad sex we have had and the number of guys who really either did not notice or did not care is like depressing. It's so depressing. All right. So this dude comes in and he is talking to her and she recognizes his voice and she realizes that he is Ashleigh. And she's like, but my dad doesn't like you. But it turns out that like, yeah, like this guy isn't somebody that her father likes, but he had to sort of like compromise because she's not a virgin and he knows that. And he takes her into this room to chat and they have dinner and he's using magic to create like globe lights in the room. And she realizes that like he's actually listening to what she says and seems interested and that she finds him interesting as well. She could not believe her luck. This is too good to be true. I can't forget that, though I do find him attractive. I didn't agree to this. I wonder if he knows. It is time I showed you to our rooms, he said. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly. He's a good-looking man. So long as he doesn't have any nasty habits in the bedroom, it shouldn't be an unpleasant night. It might even be enjoyable. After all, I did fancy him the first time I met him. So they go into a room, and it's this beautiful, elegant room with all this, like, furniture that is handmade by slaves, of course. I'm afraid I must leave you here, Kachiro said. I have urgent business in the city to attend to. I will return tomorrow, however. My slaves will attend you, and your slave will be given a room of her own close by, so she can respond quickly to your needs. And she's like, what? Kind of like bummed out, even though initially she was not looking forward to this at all. And Vora is like, not entirely clear on why he could be choosing to do this as well. We spent the whole day eating and talking. Is that part of the tradition? Vora smiled. No, none of it was. And Stara says, well, at least Father let me keep you. And Vora's like, yes. And looks a little bit puzzled by it. But when Stara hears that, she thinks it means that Vora wishes she had gotten to stay at home. And Vora's like, no. It's not that I'm sad to have left. I'm just a little bit worried about your brother now because I can't do anything to help them from here. And even though you are agreeing to have this baby, it comes out a little bit later, that's not really the line of succession that your father wants. And this makes total sense to me. Like, in a patriarchal system, a wife marrying other blood and having his child is not the same as the son fathering a child directly from the bloodline in their minds. Now, granted, she is of the same bloodline. It's still a child of their bloodline. But women's contribution is obviously not as important. So the way that they think, it makes total sense to me that that would be the priority, making sure that it's the son again. So Dakin is walking, and he realizes that there's a rock in his shoe, and he has to like kind of pull over and fix it. And he's thinking about how he really does need new shoes, but he's also like kind of feels guilty having to take stuff from villagers when they've just like gone through absolute hell. And as he's like fixing his shoes, he is listening to some people talking about the fact that they don't like that they have to leave their town if they don't know for sure the Sachakans are even coming. They feel like if they abandon ship and, you know, leave their, for example, they have some animals. If they don't feed and water their animals, they'll die. And then the Sachakans, if they don't ever have shown up, that they will have like let some of their livestock suffer and die and go to waste for nothing, which is a totally valid thing to be concerned about. And it's not like Dakin isn't like mad at them, but he starts listening to the fact that one of them believes that the Sachakans have been eating Kyralian babies. And it's an interesting moment because he's like, first of all, where did they hear that? And secondly, there's no way that they believe that, right? And then goes, but what will the consequences be when all this is over? Will people keep believing it? If we lose, it will do nothing but make occupation and a return to slavery more terrifying. But if we win, it will be just another reason to hate the Sachakans. How far that hate takes us, I can't guess. It's hard enough imagining us defeating the Sachakans in the first place. Okay, so I don't really understand what it is that this author is trying to do here. Full disclosure, because it seems like what she's attempting to say is hating an enemy for the wrong reasons is, what's the word I want? It's like it will lead to nothing but more strife later on. But the thing is, you can't have the Sachakans be these sort of cartoonish villains for this entire book and then bring up the fact that they don't really eat babies, and I can't believe that people believe that, and have me really like take you seriously or care about this character's concern. Does that make sense? Like, it feels to me that she is trying to it feels like the author is trying to be like, well, you know, they've done some bad things, but we don't need to make them into literal monsters. And I'm like, but you kind of did that, though, yourself as an author. You made them into literal monsters with the way that you decided to have them behave from the very start of this book. Just because they don't actually eat babies like an ogre doesn't mean that, like, them ripping people apart and using them for magic isn't horrifying and just as abusive and terrible. Like, there comes a point where I can't distinguish between one horrible thing and another. When somebody is fine with, like, torturing and raping an entire village of women, but they didn't eat babies, am I supposed to, like, feel better about that? Well, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just doesn't, I don't understand what she's trying to do here. And the concerns that Dakin has about, like, it'll be just another reason to hate the Sachakans. So what? They've been, like, literal monsters. It's fine. I'm not concerned about it or sympathetic. I don't know what you're trying to do. So let's see. He goes and talks to Tessia, and asks if she found what she was looking for because she went into town to get some like cures. And she says that she bought ingredients to make cures instead of buying the ones that were for sale because the woman who was making them really was not entirely on the up and up. It seems that she was somebody who just like put shit in there that didn't really do anything. And she, like Tessia in the end, just was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this myself. This is sketchy. I don't like this. Which I respect. And Martin says, I think it's the difference between simply wanting to defend yourself and going out to seek revenge. Look, they had entire villages of people that were murdered. Whether or not they ate babies, these people want revenge. They took all of the women and put them in a barn to systematically rape and torture them. Left them alive so that they could do this. You're going to want revenge. Babies don't have to be a part of this at all for me to want revenge. Are you kidding me? Like, it's just a weird line in the sand that this author is trying to draw. Just be like, well, you know, they do terrible things, but they don't do that. Okay, no. That's still fucking horrifying. And absolutely, like, no. It just isn't. I don't know. This author, like, hits it really well in some places with these stories. And especially when it comes to the experiences of women, there's a whole interaction with Giant that I like a lot better than this later on. But in terms of her handling of the like villain and race issue, it's just a weird like blind spot that she does not seem to know how to get right. So he talks to Narvellan at one point, and Narvellan is mentioning the fact that he appreciates that he doesn't have to have a, what do you call it? An apprentice to take power from, that he can just use a servant. And Dakin is sort of alarmed at the fact that Narvellan seems really hopeful that this law is going to be permanently changed. That he like maybe doesn't have to have an apprentice to take power from. He's hoping maybe if I can just compensate people with money, that will be enough. And Dakin doesn't really seem like 100% on this. It's an interesting conversation because I understand Narvellan's point of view as well, where he doesn't enjoy teaching and he doesn't feel that he's good at it. So, you know, I don't want to have to be a teacher. At the same time, though, you do have magic and that just comes with a responsibility that's outside of your control. So, you know, Martin says it's not about babies specifically. It's about exaggerating their actions. Although, as you said, in this book, the actual actions are bad enough to barely need to exaggerate. That's kind of what I mean, Martin, is that this author has gone out of her way to have things happen to characters off page that are so terrible that when our main characters find out about it, we don't, as a reader, even get to hear precisely what happened. There's talk of the kinds of torture and pulling people apart in pieces and torment for fun that is so like horrifying and graphic that it isn't even dialogue. It's implied. There's no need to put this moment with babies in there as well. It felt like she has done, as an author, all she needs to do to make it clear that these people are psychopaths as a whole. And sure, some of them are worse than others. You know, we had the one guy, DeKiro or whatever his name was. But like, you know, it feels like a weird spot to be like, oh, well, if they hear about that, then maybe it'll make it even worse. Why would that make it worse than thinking that they're going to be raped or that their loved ones are going to be pulled apart with pliers in front of them? You know, like, it's just, I don't know. There's a point where that it feels like she's trying to make a point that she herself has undermined with her own writing up until this point, and it doesn't work. So, yeah, Dakin, with his conversation with Narvellan, he's also kind of like a little weird about the fact that Narvellan has realized how young and inexperienced he is, and is like really bowing to the decisions of other people a little bit more than he had, which you would think he would appreciate, but it seems more that he isn't really like happy with the fact that Narvellan doesn't have more backbone. But yeah, there's this whole like the discussion that they all have, like as a group, all of the magicians, they talk about the way that they're going to be training some of the other apprentices and creating a sort of a cohesive army. And Dakin is like, God damn it, I didn't want to do like an army. I don't want to, but there's not really a choice at this point. So then we go to Giant's point of view. Giant winds up in a situation with a bunch of the other apprentices where they are all looking for booze, and they wind up like wandering away from the main group and getting attacked by a bunch of Sachakans. And the only way that they are able to get out of it is that Giant realizes that what they find is not booze that's drinkable. It's like basically rubbing alcohol. It's like the kind of thing that you use for like cleaning and, sterilizing stuff, but it's not drinkable. And they're all a little disappointed, but it's also extremely flammable. So when the Sachakans come at him and his friends, he is able to like convince them to bail at the exact right moment before he lights the place up, and the Sachakans wind up getting caught in it. But it looks really bad for a minute there, and he is really frustrated with the fact that like he should have known better than to allow all of them to wander this far away. He takes responsibility because he's the oldest, if not the outright oldest, but I think he is at this point until maybe Mikken comes back, but the most experienced and maybe the most trained. So one of them gets hurt, and he really takes it hard. He just feels like that is on him, which I don't feel that way, but I totally understand him feeling that way. And I'm not like, there are times when some characters take responsibility for things that I'm like, okay, you know what? You're just being a little bit arrogant right now. It's not always about you. Get over yourself. But then there are times where I'm like, yeah, all right. You know what? Like, while that isn't really your fault in the way that you think it is, I can't help but like put myself in your shoes. And I'm not sure that I would have felt that different had I been there when this happened, So he is, and I appreciate his quick thinking, at least, he gets them out of there. It's not like he's so stymied by what just happened that he feels like he's got no idea how to go up against these guys. He actually uses physical objects and the combustibility of things that like, in other words, he doesn't use magic to defend himself. He does it first to like make a shield and stuff. But what winds up overcoming the Sachakans is a combination of using magic and using physical objects, which I like a lot, because there just is a point where, as much as magic is valuable and useful, if you know that you are going to be outclassed with the amount of magic that these Sachakans are getting their hands on because they're killing so many people and absorbing their energy, and that these are a bunch of fucking apprentices they're up against, not even full-fledged magicians, this is going to have to be the way you start to handle that stuff. You have to put yourself in places where they are going to have a tactical advantage that would also benefit a regular, mortal, vanilla human being. And I'm hoping that Giant keeps this in mind, because I'm a little bit worried that he's just going to see this as like having gotten lucky this one time. And I don't feel like that's really what it was. But yeah, Giant is realizing, as he's like teaching some of the other apprentices, that he doesn't really like dislike teaching. He's just like it has its ups and downs. And he says, I've always thought I'd put off taking on an apprentice for as long as possible, but I can see now there are benefits other than the obvious one of gaining power. The inexperienced apprentices ranged in age from 12, much younger than the usual age for apprenticeship, to 18. He suspected the older ones had been chosen because their masters preferred to teach someone less gifted from their own family than someone more gifted from outside. So, nepotism. Cool. That shit happens, man. People talk about talent mattering, and it's like, to a degree. Talent is lovely, but really, it's secondary to who you know in the end. And that is just true of the world. So this woman or girl shows up, and Giant is noticing the fact that she is kind of like picking on one of the other apprentices. And they begin to retaliate, and then she is about to retaliate again. And finally, Dakin steps in and says, that'll be enough. You all seem to have grasped it by now. But Giant doesn't actually get a chance to sort of like stop this from continuing and escalating. And that is a bummer to me. Like, I appreciate that Dakin's the one that stops but it's not like he stops it because he sees what's happening. He just stops it because they're done with the lesson. And Giant is sort of wondering whether or not he's going to get a chance to address what happened, or if this is going to happen again. And the girl who like started the whole thing she comes up to him and has this sort of expression on her face that he does not like. He feels that it is her appraising him. He feels that, yes, she's very attractive, but also she's extremely aware that she's very attractive, which he's not a huge fan of. This is one of those things that, like, I wouldn't have the reaction I do if it weren't for how much of a trope this is with women specifically. Like, if I see a guy who I can tell is aware he's good looking, I agree. It's a big turnoff for somebody to be really fucking like cocky. But women are very specifically treated as like, you're beautiful and you don't know you're beautiful, and that's what makes you beautiful. Those are literally the lyrics to a love song. And it is a well-known, like, among pickup artists and shitty abusive boyfriends, a tactic employed is to tell women that they aren't as attractive as they think they are in various ways, in order to keep them feeling insecure and thus more willing to put up with your shit because they don't believe that they can do better. And so his immediate assessment of like, oh, but she knows she's hot. Part of me is like, yeah, that's annoying. And then another part of me is like, shut up, Giant. And she tries to flirt with him and puts her hand between, like, in the crook of his arm. And he is not here for it and takes her hand away. And she tries to be like, I'm sorry, that was too forward. I'm just trying to be friendly. And he says, are you? And she's like, yeah, of course. What else would I be doing? And he says, we're at war, not a party. This is not the city, not the place for flirting and looking for a husband or lover. And there are other young women here. Younger, less experienced women. Do you realize how your friendliness may affect them? How it may encourage young male apprentices to think all female magicians are available, or older magicians to assume women are too foolish and distractible to make good magicians? And she stares at him for a second and then says, you are assuming too much. Young men will always entertain stupid ideas about women, no matter how demure or friendly they are. You've just proved that yourself. Before laying blame, take a good look at yourself. You might be surprised to find who is the foolish, distractible one. And she ain't wrong. This is the thing. It's like this is what happens when you are from a particular group that is not given opportunities that other groups take for granted, is that you suddenly have to become an ambassador for everybody in your group. So black folks understand this is a thing where, like, unless you are the perfect victim, nobody is going to care that the police went way overboard with you and shot you or abused you in some way, unless you were behaving perfectly and have a flawless past and whatever. Your behavior represents the entire group, and you are represented by other people. If you are in a workplace and you are from a minority, people will judge an entire minority based on the way you behave, and you are aware of that, you know. And it's like, as a woman, this is 100% a thing that when you start to, like, fall into that trap of seeing the way that other people in your group behave and being like, oh, you're giving us a bad name. And that's a fucked up thing to think, but you absolutely, like, fall into that trap. I have gotten away from doing that in regard to being a woman and dealing with my own internalized misogyny. But you know where I still fall into that trap? Fat people. Because I'm fat, and watching somebody else who is also fat, but who is doing stereotypical, like, fat person, lazy, slovenly, greedy things makes me go, oh my God, you're making us all look bad. That's not their responsibility. They have no reason to worry about what assumptions people make about fat folks in general based on what they themselves are doing as a solitary human being. But I still fall into that. And that's what Giant is doing. He's insinuating that whatever she does, everyone will see as being true of all the female apprentices, which is disgusting and really fucked up of him. And he doesn't seem to really internalize what she says. He feels ashamed after, but he doesn't seem to really get what it is that she's saying. And the fact that, like, one male apprentice doing such and such would not be taken as all these male apprentices are doing XYZ. It would not be treated the same way. But yeah, Tessia sees this entire thing, and she sort of, like, teases him a little bit about it. 'Cause he tries to say that he thinks this girl was only flirting with him because of who his family is. And she's like, look, I'm not that into, like, warriors and whatnot, but some women are. So she might not be after your bloodline at all. She might just have been like, hey, he's attractive and daring, and maybe that's, like, something that that is compatible with me and my daringness, which we've seen because of her, like, picking on other students, that she is a little bit. So yeah, I liked this moment, but I really wish that it felt like Giant really understood what it was that girl was trying to say to him. And let's see, she says, it must be so frustrating for you being so close to the end of your training. And he says, it is. But if I'd finished, then I might only be a higher magician for a matter of weeks or days. This way, Dakin has 2 apprentices to draw from. And she says, but if you were a higher magician, you'd have your own source to draw from, and there'd be another fighter in the army. And the women would have even more reason to annoy you with their flirting and their interest. I wouldn't be surprised if Dakin taught you higher magic soon for that very reason. And Giant's, like, initially for a second, like, oh, sweet, that'd be awesome. And then he stops and he's like, no, I don't really want that. And he thinks about it for a second and realizes that he doesn't really want that because he would miss Tessia. And she's giving him this knowing look. And he thinks that it's the reason that we know, I believe, that she's smiling at him is because he has been frustrated at the fact that Tessia showing up delayed his training, that he could have been a higher magician if it weren't for her. But what he, like, the way he, like, turns it over in his mind is maybe he thinks she is aware that he likes her and wants to be around her. And then he remembers the fact that she just said that she is not attracted to warrior types. And maybe that's not going to work out. And he is like, on the one hand, it's good for me to not have attachments to people when any of us could die at any given moment. But on the other hand, I just really, like, would like to have some comfort and somebody that I care about, like, working with me, and would, you know, reciprocal love is nice. So yeah, Giant's dealing with a lot of emotions. It does not feel that Tessia has quite reached the point where she feels as clearly about him as he feels about her. And I say clearly in that, like, you know, he has finally come to a very concrete moment in his mind of being like, oh my God, I care about her. I have feelings for her. But she has not reached that about him, although I think it's inevitable that that's coming. So we go to Hanara, and he is a little bit nervous because Asara, one of the other Ichani, is telling Takato that he needs more slaves. That the fact that he's only got Hanara and I think Jokara is the name of the other slave is not enough, because he's supposed to be the one in charge. He really should have more than anybody. So she gives Takato 2 slaves. And Hanara is worried about his standing in comparison to them. And the fact that he's a source slave, because he has some magical ability, is going to grant him higher status anyway. But he also realizes that if one of them is a woman and is attractive, Takato will be infatuated. And infatuated is the wrong word, but tempted to give her treatment above Hanara because of the fact that he will also be sleeping with her. Which is just, these poor slaves, I swear to God. So, yeah, the whole thing. You are both, and you too, Jokara, to follow Hanara's orders unless they conflict with mine. Do you understand? And Hanara is initially, like, delighted, and then is sort of like, ooh, but they better do what I say, because if they don't, I might be punished for them disobeying. But then they get interrupted by the arrival of a Sachakan who has been sent by the king. Ashaki Nomako. And Takato asks him, do you intend to stay with us, or are you going back to the emperor? And Ashaki says, Emperor Vochira has decided to support your efforts to bring Kyralia back under the influence of the Empire, and has ordered me to provide what assistance and guidance is needed, including this army of magicians loyal to Sachakan. And makes it really sound like he is going to be out here helping Takato. But Hanara sees the way that Nomako looks at Takato when Takato isn't paying attention. And he can tell that this dude is out here thinking that he is going to be able to take Takato's place, and doesn't understand how much more difficult that's going to be than he thinks. And this guy keeps on sort of like overstepping, and nothing has quite come to a head yet, but it's obvious that, like, it's heading in that direction. So we go back to Tessia, and they encounter this, like, really horrific scene of destruction. Another village with tons of corpses, like, in the road. And Lady Avaria comes at her. There is a baby that is crying and needs care, and somebody just handed over to Avaria because she's a woman, and they just assume that she knows how to take care of a baby. And Avaria says something, or no, I think Tessia says, I guess this proves the rumors about Sachakans eating babies aren't true. Oh, no, it was Avaria that said that. My bad. Tessia felt something inside her twist painfully. Is leaving him to die of starvation any less cruel? No. So yeah, they're thinking that, like, a couple of them said that we should just put this baby out of its misery, that we can't be taking him on the road with us. And it's not like, you know, any of us knows how to care for this child. But Tessia is like, isn't there a servant that we can give a baby to? And Avaria says, Senia suggested we give him to the unmentioned ones. Unmentioned ones? Tessia frowned, then smothered a laugh. The women following the army? I suppose one might take him for the right price. So yeah, camp followers, as they are called in the Song of Ice and Fire books. It's weird that they're being treated this way, but sure, it makes sense. Unmentioned ones. All right, you delicate flowers. And let's see. Oh, right. Avaria nodded. Thank you. She looked at Senia. Could you ask? The servant smiled, turned her horse, and started riding back down the line. And this is when they see all of the corpses in the road. They find a dude who is really badly burned. And Tessia watches this other healer get called up because she's still an apprentice, and so they actually have guild healers now. And she feels a little bit of a pang of loss that she's not the one that they call on automatically anymore. But they say that the guy is too badly burned and they are not going to be able to save him. So there's no real point in using any of their medicines on him, because it would just be a waste when they know that he is going to be dying anyway. Like, what's the point? But what Tessia is concerned about is the fact that this guy is suffering. Like, it's really a fucked up moment because she sees that he's there's this stretch of burnt grass leading to his body, and all of his clothes are burnt. And then she comes up to him and realizes that isn't his clothes, that it's his skin, and it's all been blackened because he's burned. And the daughter is standing there worried because of her father being in obvious pain. And Tessia decides to sort of delve into his body and mind and find a way to cut off the nerves so that the pain doesn't continue to torment him. She's worried that if she cuts off the pain completely, he may not realize that anything is even wrong, and that this might be motivation for him to try and stand up and give his daughter false hope that he's going to be okay, when in fact he isn't going to be okay. It's just that he doesn't feel the pain anymore. So Tessia is a little bit worried about handling it this way, and she's not wrong. She says, Father always said that pain was the body's way of making a person sit still and heal. This man is still going to die, but how shocking would it be for his daughter if he started walking about all burned only to collapse and die? And yeah, this is one of those things that when people talk about, I just want to be rid of the pain. Yeah, but if you get rid of the pain completely of something that's chronic, you could get up and damage yourself even further and cause the pain is there to signal you that something is wrong. And if you don't have that signal, you may just continue fucking your body up. But that's not exactly a concern here the same way. So she is able to lessen the pain significantly, because when she's in this guy's head, she can feel the pain as well in a way. And she sits back and she says to Giant, don't worry, I've worked out how to block the pain with magic. And Giant just stares at her and he's just like, holy shit, really? And the father is able to speak finally because the pain is lessened. And he says, best thing you can do now is to kill those bastards before they do this to anyone else. Go on, your army's getting further ahead of you. And they stand up and Giant is like, but you didn't try to actually heal him. And she says, no, there was no point trying. I couldn't save him. And he says, there's always a point in trying. Even if you can't save someone, you might learn something. And you did. You stopped the pain. And she says, that's not healing. And he says, it's something new, something that no other magician or healer has managed. And she says, and I don't know if I can undo it. What if I stopped pain and then I couldn't unstop it and it left somebody totally numb forever? And he's like, nah, you'll figure it out. He's really not worried about it. And she says something about how I couldn't do this without your help. And he gets very emotional and just jumps on his horse and takes off with hardly a word. And she watches him leave and is like, what did I say? Has our little conversation yesterday made him reconsider what he thinks of female magicians? Being too openly friendly with me might ruin his chances with them. A pity. We were getting along so well. I don't really know what kind of weird train of thought led Tessia to thinking that was like a possibility, but girl, you are turning yourself into a pretzel with these weird, like, okay. Oh, Ashley's here. Hi, Ashleigh. So Stara is in her bedroom and Vora prostrates herself the way that she do. And it turns out that Stara went to the baths because she was hoping to catch her husband during a naked moment and seduce him. And she says that he wasn't a jerk to her, but there was a definite vibe that he expected her to try something like this. And funny how I wasn't surprised he didn't seduce me on the night of the wedding, but he's surprised I've only left it for a week. I wonder how long I'm supposed to wait. I did what you suggested, no reaction. Nothing? Perhaps he was pretending. I have no reason to doubt. He wasn't wearing any clothing, and neither was I. Oh, what happened then? He told me he's never been able to bed a woman or even wanted to. He was very apologetic about it. I asked him why he married me, and he said he'd hoped it would be different with a woman as beautiful as me. Vora gave a quiet snort. That, I suspect, is a lie. What happened next? I told him I was hoping for children. He told me not to worry, that we would find another way. He made me promise not to tell anyone, then he got me to put my clothes back on and leave. So, a couple things could be true here. A, guy's asexual. B, guy's gay. C, guy has like a sincere health problem. Or D, some other thing I haven't thought of. And I would kind of love it if it turned out that this was genuinely like a health problem, because that's something that's so weird and rare in stories like this for a guy to, for like, first of all, the fact that we're talking about how this guy can't get it up is very like, for these books, very overt. A lot of the sex or the attraction in these books is subtext, or when it is text, it's treated very like chastely. But this is straight up like, he can't fuck me. And so if it were just like, he needs these herbs, he's got, some sort of like blood flow problem or something, that'd be wild and a total surprise. So maybe, but I suspect that this guy is probably going to wind up being gay. And because like at one point he says something about how she has like great taste. And she's like, I appreciate that you appreciate that. And that makes him be like, oh, hey, don't tell those ladies about my problem, by the way. So I feel like this dude is aware that he's gay. And when he says, I was hoping that it would be different with a woman as beautiful as you, I don't even think that he was lying. I think that he knows he has to marry for the sake of appearances. And he is also hoping that if a woman is beautiful enough, that maybe he will be able to, like, I slept with a guy several times in high school who turned out to later be gay. And I was the only girl that he ever slept with. And he said at the time that it was because he had never encountered any woman that he found attractive until me. And he has since never slept with a woman again because he's like, no, I'm actually gay. Like, I'm not even bi. But he gave it a shot, And so I could see this guy being like, oh, maybe if she's hot enough, I'll be able to do it. Like, maybe it'd be fine. And then realizing like, nope, still can't. But, I would imagine, considering the way that society is in Sachakan, that is frowned upon. So, Ashleigh says, but if it was a medical condition, would he really say that he's not interested? It might be that he isn't interested, though. That can happen. Depression can cause your libido to just disappear. So I don't know. It's who knows? But there's I just figure it probably will wind up being that he's gay. And that like little comment about how she has great taste is going to wind up being like, see, he's gay. He likes clothes, which, you know, is problematic in its way, but it's fine. Whatever. So we find out here about Vora thinking that maybe he knows that your father knows that you aren't going to be able to have a child, and he doesn't intend for you to have one. If your father doesn't intend you to have a child, then he has to have considered that you may have become pregnant by other means. Your father must know he can contest the paternity of any child of yours and succeed. Either more people know about Kachiro's inability than he realizes, or your father has other evidence, someone willing to verify it, or unwilling but powerless to prevent a mind read. So if father doesn't mean me to have a child or plans to contest its legitimacy, then who does he want to have inherit? You mean he still means to kill Nachira. And she's like, I fucking agreed to marry in the first place in order to keep her safe. And then she realizes, oh, he was just getting me out of the way. And this is when we find out about the inheritance through the male sons is the thing that's ideal. And whether she has a kid or not, it isn't going to be the same to him as his son having a child. Which again, it might be the son that's infertile. So yeah, go ahead and kill her and then find out that his next wife can't have kids either. Oh, it sucks to be you. Like, this guy does not... Men are never at fault, right? And they're thinking about how they wish that they could sneak Nachira out and put her somewhere safe. And I'm wondering if that isn't going to happen eventually. And Stara like wonders about her mother and how much her mother even knows about all of this. And is thinking like, you know, why did she let me come here? And then she realizes that she begged to come. Her mother was trying to keep her from coming, but beyond just like locking her up somewhere, what was she supposed to do? So part of it is that Stara did not trust her mom's judgment, but also her mother could have like put it in words and been like, this is what might happen to you, but she might not have known the extent of everything. It would have been easier for your father to have you killed. You must have enough family feeling to want to avoid that. He's taking quite a risk marrying you to Kachiro. Good God. You've told Kachiro you want to have them. He will think it odd if you don't attempt to. Let's hope he does intend to be the father by other means, because it could be a little awkward if he suggests you use a lover. Yeah, that's complicated. So we have the scout that comes back who's telling the other magicians that there are about 60. And when they ask how many are magicians, and he's like, oh, no, 60 magicians. I only counted the magicians. There's 2 or 3 times as many slaves, I reckon. And all of them are looking at each other like, holy fuck, seriously? Like, they've grown exponentially all of a sudden. What's going on? Which I imagine is because they don't know that the king of Sachakan has thrown in with these guys yet. They are not quite aware yet. But yeah, things are serious. And there's this like big confrontation. I'm running out of time here. I already talked about what happened with Jayan and the alcohol a little bit earlier, so I feel like I can skip that. But Dakan and all of the magicians have this like confrontation where the Sachakans are like hitting them and the Kyralians are not dying. They are using up each other's magic, so they wind up running out, but they aren't killed. And the Sachakans do not know what to make of this. Like, they lose a bunch of their own, and they expected that at least they are going to be able to take down some of the Kyralians in return. But that is not actually how this happens. And we go to Hanara's point of view, and there's a spot where the interloper, what's his name? Nomako, that's right. Nomako is trying to give orders, and Takato has to like get in his face and be like, I'm the fucking one running this, so stop it. And this is going to be a great way to like get at these Sachakans in the end, I think, is that there's discord within their own group. And Nomako says, we've lost a dozen. They haven't lost a single one. This is a trick. And they wind up having like this weird confrontation, where, let's see, I'm trying to find the moment where, they're protecting and supporting each other, something we should be doing, though I doubt we can expect it from one quarter. We cannot be sure. It may be a trap. I like your idea last night, she said. Let's do that instead. We need horses, Tachito warned. We should demand some of Nomako's as reparation and give the impression we need his assistance, Takato asked. Asara grimaced and said nothing. So yeah, I like this little chat that they have about like how to include this guy or use him without like making it seem like they're dependent on him. And then we have the big confrontation with Giant and all of them in the distillery, I guess. And Giant like is really feeling himself after this goes pretty well until he remembers that like somebody got very hurt. Tessia like has a bit of a moment when she's like thinking that Giant has gotten hurt and is like, I think coming closer to realizing that she has started to have feelings for him. Giant looks unharmed. The relief she felt was stronger than she'd have thought warranted. Yeah, I bet it was. And she realizes that Giant respects what she can do because there's a hurt apprentice that he summoned her to be able to like some of the pain get taken away. And then she realizes that the dude is healing, that it's healing really quickly, and that it's like magic that's doing this. And she gets pulled out of it before she can quite get a handle on what exactly is happening. But I am excited for this to start becoming a thing that she can really do well and control well. So yeah, she pinched and squeezed and nudged and wondered what the magicians and healers watching her were thinking. Everything was back in place. So it turns out that his back is hurt, but it wasn't broken. There were just like bits of him out of alignment that she managed to piece together better. So yeah, there's a moment at the end where Dakin is like, yeah, so I'm going to teach Giant how to do higher magic. And Tessia's like, I fucking knew it. And then she sees the expression on Giant's face and can't help but laugh at the fact that he didn't seem to believe her. But then she has another moment the way Giant did of just being like, oh, I'm actually kind of sad that I'm not going to be seeing him as much after this then. So I think I'm going to wrap. But thank you guys very much for listening. Thank you to Ashleigh for hanging out, to Martin for hanging out, and Ashleigh for commissioning this one. And yeah, I'm just really interested to see what happens from here. I'm very invested in Tessia's discovery of magic and medicine going together. So I'm excited that this is starting to take shape a little bit better. But yeah, all right, guys, I'll see you in a bit. And until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.